This happened when I was in my late 20s during the fall of 2019. At the time, I was fresh out of college and had recently gotten a job as a computer intern at my local high school. My job mainly consisted of helping faculty with errands and replying to school emails. Other than that, it was relatively easy. The area I had worked in was a small office on the second floor and was only large enough to fit 2 computers and a desk. Other than that, the space was very small but chill. 2 of my colleagues, who I actually ended up getting along with, worked downstairs while I was alone upstairs. It was less interaction, but whatever. One day, I had to work late to make up hours as I had been away the week before. I didn't mind it, the room would be quiet and administration wouldn't be around. So there I am, typing away on my computer when the main doors to the library suddenly opened with full force. The room I was in was directly connected to the library, so you could hear everything going on inside the building. Security is the only one with keys to the library, so I figured it was one of them coming in to have their break or whatever. I continue typing on my computer when I begin to hear heavy footsteps approaching my direction. I jump out of my seat and turn around, expecting to see one of the security guards, but instead saw some guy I had never seen before. He wore a black long-sleeved shirt, black pants, and a hat. He looked like a guest or maybe a parent. I asked him if he needed help, and he ever so slowly glanced over in both directions before saying that he was here to pick up his son. Judging by his appearance, he didn't look like a parent as he looked much too young, but didn't want to question him. I told him that he needed to go downstairs to the main office, which was where he would be if he were still waiting. He thanked me and then proceeded to walk down the hall down the stairs, not looking back. For whatever strange reason, I was a bit glad that he had left as he gave off such a weird vibe I can't even explain. That being said, I still resumed my work while talking on the phone with my girlfriend when I hear 3 loud bangs from downstairs followed by screaming. Assuming they were gunshots, I turn off the lights, lock the door, and hide under my desk, practically crying to my girlfriend. I stayed put for about a good 3 minutes before one of the security guards came rushing in and telling me that I had to get out. Long story short, we ran out of the school along with the remaining administration and staff. It didn't take long for police to arrive and enter the school with their guns out. They enter the school and come out with the man I had talked to earlier in handcuffs trying to resist arrest. Turns out, this guy was actually a student who had come into the school with a loaded gun and shot one of the teachers working in the office. Apparently, he was expelled 2 years ago for assaulting the same teacher and had come back as, I guess, some sort of revenge. Thankfully, the teacher surprisingly had survived the gunshots and had a speedy recovery when she was admitted to the hospital. I still work at that same school, and we now have extra security around as well as a police officer on standby 24/7. I still don't know if he was going to shoot me that day or how he had managed to enter the school with a gun. Security is this country's biggest lie. In our homes, cities, airports, and schools. The way I see it is that nobody is safe no matter how tough you think you are or how much you can defend yourself. For a little bit of backstory, I was around 16 years old when this took place, and it's one of the most horrifying incidents that's ever happened. I go to a school with around 1,500 people. This happened during my junior year, and I'm a senior now. I'd like to note that I have trouble making new friends and talking with people when it came to interaction. What I mean by that is that I don't normally talk to people in general, mainly due to the fact that I was a very socially awkward teen. Most of my time at school, I'd be that one girl you'd see walking around alone, minding her own business. I guess you could call me that of an introvert at the time, as I hated crowds and just kept to myself. Anyway, one of my classes, which was 4th period, involved PE, which is a subject I wasn't a fan of. I have very sensitive skin, so whenever I'm outside, I have to put on special sunscreen and a hat to block the sun. Anyway, one of my classes, which was 4th period, involved PE, which is a subject I wasn't a fan of. I have very sensitive skin, so whenever I'm outside, I have to put on special sunscreen and a hat to block the sun. Thankfully, my PE teacher understood my situation and just let me walk around and do laps. One day, our teacher had instructed the class to play out in the field and said I could wait out on the bleachers till they were done. I gladly accepted and watched some videos on my phone until then. 30 minutes into the class, and the sun is killing me to the point where I had to sit under a nearby tree. I continue to watch my video when I hear a noise from behind me. I turn around and there's this guy I had never seen before looking at me from behind the fence. Behind the school fence is nothing but overgrown vegetation and the racquetball court that the school never used. He wore torn jeans and a red shirt, and his hair was a mess. The smell of marijuana and alcohol on him hit me like a brick to the point where I had to hold my breath. I had no idea where he came from, and I knew that he wasn't one of the students in the class as there was only 15 of us. With the school being so close to a city that wasn't so great, it wasn't uncommon to see people like this every now and then. I say hi in a nervous tone, and he then tells me that he needs help finding his dog and if I could help him. At this point, he was clearly lying and figured that he was just on something and needed money for food or something. I politely tell him no, declared that I was not stupid and to have a nice day, hoping he'd get the hint to leave me alone. He follows behind, trying to stay as hidden as possible before practically pleading me to help him. I decline a second time and tell him that I couldn't leave school grounds for something like that. He then starts to repeat his phrase to the point where I couldn't take it anymore. I turn around and say no once again, a bit frustrated, and that's when he says something that still terrifies me till this day. "You made the smart choice, kid." He stares at me with a wicked look on his face, only to turn around walking back into the brush. Sticking out of his pocket was a large knife, which made me go back to the bleachers. I didn't tell the teacher as I feared I'd be the one to get into trouble or that my story wouldn't seem believable. I never saw that man again for the rest of the year, and I hope I never do. Those words he said to me still sends a chill down my spine every now and then. I don't know what his intentions were or who he was, but if he had a knife with him, they obviously weren't good. This happened when I was about 14 years old on a field trip with my class during the 8th grade. Every year, the 8th graders would take a field trip up to Six Flags, which, for those of you who don't know, is kind of like a Disney World but revolves more around roller coasters. We had taken the long bus ride to the park, and we had made sure we had all our belongings and stuff for the day. One of our teachers, Mr. Diaz, had told us to group up with a few of our classmates, but required us that we'd return to him every 3 hours to make sure everyone was still here. Now, being very socially awkward, I was definitely no popular kid, but I managed to find a few friends and go with them. We'll call them Carlos and Ivan. We hit a few rides here and there, participated in some water activities, and ate at the overpriced food stands where they charged $7 a soda. At around 5 or 6 p.m., we happened to be walking around the park where there weren't many attractions, meaning there weren't really any people around either. This area of the park was mainly used for people to take a stroll through. We sat down at a nearby bench talking to each other when I noticed a man walking towards us. As soon as I made eye contact with the guy, I instantly knew he was coming to us. He walks right up to us and asks us the following. "Hey, I'm part of the management. Can you three boys help me out by helping me load up a few boxes onto my truck?" To give you a better understanding, let me give you a brief description of the guy. He was tall with a medium build and his hair was a mess. At this point, I knew he was lying when he claimed he was from the management, as he wore nothing that resembled an employee. In fact, he really didn't look like anybody who would belong at a park. He wore a stained white shirt with cargo pants, and we could smell the alcohol in his breath. It was obvious by now that this guy was not an employee. We kindly declined, telling him that we couldn't leave the park as we were on a field trip. Nonsense. Come on, guys. It'll only be a minute. Ivan stepped up and said, "Come on, guys. It'll be alright." Seeing as Ivan was a big dude, we figured that if there was a problem, Ivan would know what to do. Needless to say, we followed the guy out into the parking lot to his truck, but we didn't see any boxes. Ivan then stops and tells the man that we had to go back to meet up with our teacher but could come back later. Before the man could say anything, Ivan motions for us to go back, and I could tell that something wasn't right. As soon as we got back into the park, Ivan immediately tells us that as he was approaching that truck, he could see two men in the back seat wearing ski masks. My blood ran cold, and I told him that we had to inform our teacher. Our teacher ended up giving us some criticism, but called over the park security anyway. We were talked to, but they didn't end up finding the man or his truck, as they had no cameras outside of the park. We haven't been back there ever since, and don't plan on going back anytime soon.